Some 60 rockets were fired by Israeli jets at Iranian positions in Syria, with a further 10 missiles fired from the ground. It is the second such strike by Israel in as many days. Tel Aviv claims it was responding to 20 rockets launched by Iran from Syrian territory into the Golan Heights. The first rocket attack by the Israelis was launched right after Donald Trump announced his decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, which was reached back in 2015. In his latest statement, the US president blamed Iran for, quote, bedlam and death.
We'll see how we do with Iran. Probably we won't do very well with them, but that's okay too. They've got to understand life, because I don't think they do understand life. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East with Syria, with Yemen, with all of the places they're involved, it's bedlam and death, and we can't allow that to happen.
Another statement from Trump, and we're in for another treat. It's so juicy you can't help but savor it. Let's take it from the top.
We'll see how we do with Iran. Probably we won't do very well with them, but that's okay too.
Of course he probably won't do very well with Iran. He just reneged on a deal that let the country's economy breathe more freely for the first time in decades. And by a chain reaction, Trump probably won't get along with a bunch of other countries either. Yes, all those nations who decided to stay in the deal, reiterating their support for it. Did Trump see this coming, the rift with his own allies? Probably the answer doesn't matter that much. After all, the America First mantra got Trump elected. And if you don't get it, you're in for a life lesson.
They've got to understand life, because I don't think they do understand life.
Wikipedia has a whole article on American exceptionalism, and this tirade could very well add a section to it. We get it, Mr. Trump. You say understand life. We here understand how America wants it. And roll over and play. And here's why, according to Trump, everyone should be on board with his Iran decision.
If you look at what's happening in the Middle East with Syria, with Yemen, with all of the places they're involved, it's bedlam and death. And we can't allow that to happen.
What a set of arguments. Apparently, it's okay to support Saudi Arabia in their bombings of Yemen, a deadly campaign that resulted in the world's worst man-made humanitarian crisis. All courtesy of American weapons, American logistical support, and American intelligence. And with Syria, I must have missed the moment when Iran joined the US in sending money and weapons to jihadist armed groups seeking regime change. Trump has laid out a list of demands to Iran. Most notably, he called on Tehran to drop the, quote, quest to destroy Israel, an explicit indicator of who Trump's trying to court here. And this is how Iran feels about Trump's move. And the American flag isn't the only thing in tatters now. So is the Iran nuclear deal, which has left Europe scrambling for a response. One thing is clear, though. They won't be taking a leaf out of Donald's out of the deal.
OK, well, let's discuss the issue now with Joshua Landis. He's director of the Centre of Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma, and he's with us now. Joshua, good afternoon. Let's just start with those comments from Trump blaming Iran for havoc in the Middle East. Trump's critics say that's actually a bit rich. What do you make of it?
Well, I think your introduction laid it out. There's two sides to this. The United States is lined up with the Sunni powers, Saudi Arabia, and, of course, Israel, against largely Shiite-backed Shiites of the Middle East, whether it's Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad in Syria, the Houthis. So we've got a classic wrangle over control of the Persian Gulf. America wants to dominate the oil routes. Iran is trying to push America back. And this has left a big open space, of course, for Russia, which has been able to side with Iran and the Shiites against the American-backed Sunni powers. And it's opened the door for Russia to make a very important comeback in the Middle East. And we see the Middle East very divided today. In the north, Russia and Iran are supreme. Syria, Lebanon, Iran, even Turkey has turned towards Russia because it cannot ignore the realities. In the south, though, the United States is still supreme. Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, Egypt, North Africa. So that's the new power disposition. And of course, President Trump, who has many pro-Israeli backers who've given him millions of dollars for his campaign, he is playing to the money, and he's playing to a world which is black and white. That's his preferred way of seeing things, and I think that's what's happening here.
So what's the next development then, Joshua? If everybody's vying for position in the Middle East, I mean, are you expecting greater tension then in Syria and an escalation of the war there?
I don't believe there'll be a real escalation. I think the power between Israel and Syria is so skewed in Israel's favor that there really is very little that Syria or Iran can do in Syria to hurt Israel. We just have seen over the last few months a number of attempts by Israel and Iran, by Syria and Iran to change the balance of power slightly in their favor, shooting down an Israeli drone, for example. But Israel has proven that it dominates the skies. It dominates technology. It can destroy most anything it wants to in Syria, and it has done it. And that's what we've seen recently here is a 1-2 punch.
Yes, Joshua, sorry to interrupt, but it continues to say it sees Iran as a threat, doesn't it, in Syria? I mean, it is obviously concerned by Iran's involvement in Syria, and we've just seen over the last few hours too a number of rockets, considerable number, targeting Iranian positions in Syria too. Israel isn't holding back. I mean, the fear amongst many is that this could go a stage further too.
Well, yes, you're right. Israel is anxious, clearly, but I think the rhetoric is much more expresses much more anxiety than there really needs to be. Let's put it that way, because Israel is a very dominant power here. Yes, Iran has established itself in Syria, has brought back Assad, has won a very important war. And I think that Iran sees its role as consolidating its control over Syria. That is not good for Israel in the long run. On the other hand, Israel has just carried off a major coup, which is to get the United States to rip up the Iran deal. That's going to make Iran poorer. It's going to make it much more difficult for all countries to have banking relations and to invest in Iran. They'll probably go ahead and find ways around it, but it will dampen the ardor for investing in Iran. It'll make Iranians poorer. That's good for Israel. It's good for Saudi Arabia. As long as Iran is poor, from their perspective, it can't fight wars and supply its allies in the Middle East with as much money. And for them, that's a win. And I think that Israel is cherishing that win today. It's given this 1-2 punch. It's shown that it can bomb anything it wants to. Yes, Iran has responded with 10 missiles, which didn't hit very much. Israel has said, if we feel a little bit of rain, we are going to have a thunderstorm in Syria. So Israel is carrying out its traditional policy of one eye for 10 eyes. And it's taking its 10 eyes today, and it's going to hurt.
Joshua, very interesting. Good to talk to you. We have to leave it there. That was Joshua Landis, Director at the Centre of Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.